Cancel.
Schweezy.
All right, so Ahsoka, the show on Disney Plus, just finished, and that means I have to talk about it now. That's the rule. That is the rule that I have to follow. So, yeah, it's been it was. I generally think the reaction I want to give you, like, what's the best way for me to describe to you what the Ahsoka show was like? And I gotta say, chef's kiss. Chef's kiss. It's just that good. It's just chef's kiss good of a show, and it was really good. The biggest what I want to say, probably the biggest complaint that not only I have, but I feel like even more people watching the show had as well, was just like how much information you kind of needed to know going in. Because, I don't know, because in my mind, I feel like Star Wars, for the most part, is you shouldn't have to really know anything about Star Wars. It makes it a little bit better of an experience if you do, but for the most part, I say, like, I don't feel like you have to necessarily understand or need back information or whatever, except for it's like, I don't know, maybe like The Mandalorian's probably the only one, because, the nice thing about The Mandalorian show, I think why everyone pretty much just fucking loves it, is mainly because you don't have to know anything about Star Wars to enjoy the show. Like, it's just a solid show, like, before you even go into a franchise. So that's that. So, like, you had to know, like, a ton of back information. Like, my mom wanted to watch it with me. I'm like, okay, but here's the thing. You have to understand storylines between two animated shows, okay? So you got two animated shows. Like, maybe you don't probably have to watch every Clone Wars episode, but, like, you have to watch at least Ahsoka's storyline. And then, once you get to Rebels, like, you kind of need to know a majority of kind of what that story is, what that is about. And then, so, like, this takes place, like, 10-ish years after Rebels, too. And so, basically, there's a lot of information you need to know beforehand. Sabine Wren, she was basically part of the Rebels crew with Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character of Hera. And, they used to be like a rebel crew, who did shit. And then they'd run into Ahsoka on their journeys. And even then, the journeys, the last season was Thrawn. And what you needed to know, even something you actually really needed to know before going in, is that, one, there's a part of the Star Wars galaxy, if you even want to call it that, there's a part of that galaxy called the Unknown Region, or unknown-ish type of thing. And so, like, you have to know that. So, like, if you somehow get stranded on one of those planets, there's no one's figured out a path, because it's fucking space. Like, you can't. The fact that they even have some form of navigation in space is pretty interesting, So, yeah, so basically what happened at the end of Rebels, spoiler alert for a show that's been out for a long time, Ezra Bridger, who is in this show, uses space whales called Purrgil to trap Thrawn in his ship, the Chimera, and they get yeeted to the unknown region of, like, the galaxy. And so it's been like 10 years since this happened. People were like, is Thrawn dead? Thrawn's not going to return. Oh, we're going to try to get Thrawn to return. You heard that a little bit. The Mandalorian, second season, they brought it up. And then the third season, they were like, we need Thrawn to bring the Empire back. And so you're just like, you kind of knew, like, they were going to probably, Thrawn's coming back. And, like, then you saw, like, actual show footage. Or, yeah, Thrawn's in this show. So, like, you kind of knew they were going to get to Thrawn, and, like, he wasn't dead, but, like, or missing, but he was just missing and didn't know how to get back. So that's, like, stuff you needed to know. So, like, Hera's now a general and had a kid with another Jedi, which she's one of those, like, ear tentacle aliens, and I'm just happy Star Wars finally confirmed that you can fuck those things. So, like, if you're attracted first, and it's also Mary Elizabeth Winstead, which we're gonna get into. Fucking Ramona, you put Ramona Flowers in this show. So yeah, so that's like background information you need to know, and you're not even considering the world between worlds, understanding that concept. What am I looking at? Trying to remember. I put in my notes. The Mortis gods. Like you had to know the Mortis gods, and even like there's a story there, and that's like Clone Wars and Rebels. You know, so much fucking stuff. So like you had to know a lot of stuff to go in, and I think that was the real like negative about this show is that going into it, like you had to already know so much background information. Where where like if let's see, like we're watching Mandalorian or even like watching Boba Fett. Like if you've never seen anything and just started watching the Book of Boba Fett, you would obviously see he was trapped in the Sarlacc pit, and then he was able to get himself out. And you see that journey from there. And we're in like if you're a Star Wars fan, you're like, oh, that's Boba Fett from the movies, and then you're watching it. If you just started watching Boba Fett, you're like, okay, this makes clear backstory. So stuff like that. That's the interesting start. But let's go into it. I'm gonna try to summarize this show, or at least what happens. I wrote down like a synopsis of every episode. So, like the first episode, you're introduced into Baylan Skoll, played by Ray Stevenson's, rest in peace. Like he fucking killed it on this role, and so they mentioned like he was a former Jedi, and like throughout the show, like you want to know more of his backstory, and there is none. All you know is that he was a Jedi. He survived Order 66. He's not necessarily a Jedi anymore, but he is Force sensitive. His lightsaber's kind of orangish red. So, like, maybe he's not all bad, and all that stuff. And they just show they're badass. They, like, get Morgan Elsbeth who was in The Mandalorian Season 2, that episode with Ahsoka. And so they come back, and so I guess, Ahsoka gets, like, this star map thing that leads you to Peridia. This is the planet that Thrawn and Ezra are on. And so she gets this map, and then she needs Sabine's help to get it, and then Sabine gets stabbed by a lightsaber, which I feel like Qui-Gon could have survived it then, And then how like you watch like the Rise of Skywalker, and you're just like, oh, force healing's now a thing? Where the fuck was this when Qui-Gon was a thing? And then you're like, so Qui-Gon got stabbed and died, but Darth Maul got cut in half and survived. So, Star Wars logic. Obviously, somehow Palpatine returned, obviously, stuff like that. So, yeah, then she gets stabbed and they get the map. And so, even though Sabine solved the puzzle with, I don't know, and stuff like that. So, going to the star map. So then, they gotta bring the map to an island, to a planet called Cetos, and there's a lot of water, very appropriately named. So I just wanted to say that Cetos, very appropriately named. Like these first two episodes, they're really just giving you like backstories, and it's kind of slow. And I was like, I just Secret Invasion just ended, and I was already like, I'm still mad at that show, and so like you get there, and now they're trying to decipher this map or something like that. So they have to do it on Cetos. I don't know. And eventually, Ahsoka decides that I'm gonna bring back Sabine as my apprentice, which they don't explain till the very last episode. That after the siege of not the siege of Mandalore, the one where they just fucking wrecked the Empire, just wrecked the planet. What Din Djarin always has to deal with, always is talking about. Ahsoka was worried that she was going to join the dark side, so that's the story there. So that's why they stopped. But yeah, I guess they're that. So then they decide to team up so they can at least stop Morgan Elsbeth. And their initial idea was hey, even if this means we never see Ezra again, we got to make sure Thrawn can't come back into this universe. It's always surprising, with Thrawn, that's always interesting. No one just comes up to a lightsaber and just fucking, makes sure he's dead, kind of in the Star Wars universe, you really need to make sure someone's dead before you're just like walking away. I know technically the rule is like the Force decides whether you live or die, or should, or something like that. That's why Obi-Wan didn't necessarily kill Anakin on not Mordor. I'm fucking saying Mordor. His fucking lava planet. I'll think of it later. So then they eventually, get this plan. And then we get to episode 3. And that's when it goes from 0 to 60. Just like, boom, just very fast. And just shows just so fucking good. That's when this show starts getting good. Like, Sabine fights Shin Hati. And appropriately, is it Shin Hati? Yeah. Or no, it's just Hati. Or, yeah, Shin Hati. Hati, appropriate last name. We're gonna get into that in a little bit. Eventually, they fight, and it turns out Merrick was a character, and it was just a dark Force witch magic or something like that, And that's also something like Dathomir, that's a backstory on Star Wars. It's only in the Clone Wars. It's weird. A lot of these Clone Wars concepts, you're just like, that's just, it's a cartoon, and then now it's like brought to like live action. So that's always really cool. They had like this thing called the Eye of Sion. There's a lot of Lord of the Rings, feeling in this, So like the Eye of Sion, and that allows you to it helps you to travel. It's once they have the map, they can travel. They can travel there. And they just hook up the ship, and they just go yeet all the way there. That's very interesting. And at that point, I think this is where the show gets like really good. Ahsoka was fighting Baylan Skoll, and then I guess, I'm not saying she was beaten. She was just, he got the upper hand, kind of thing. And so then Ahsoka falls into the water. And out of nowhere, you learn that she is now in the world between worlds, which is a concept I don't want to get into, but it's like we're all time and, summarize it. It's all time and space. This exists outside of that, And so being in this world, you can access any point of time or in space, whenever you want. That's like a very easy summary of like what we're talking about. And so anyways, though, in the world between worlds, we get to see Anakin Skywalker, horribly de-aged and everything, and that was a great like cliffhanger, like, oh, and then the next week they pay that shit off. And you get this whole almost like Ahsoka episode where she goes like her first battle, and it really makes you question like, when you watch like anything Clone Wars related, Star Wars wise, like you see it and you're like, Jedis aren't supposed to be soldiers, right? Like, from all they sound like, they're supposed to be peacekeepers and, not soldiers, which is like, the very interesting thing. Like, Ahsoka grew up, like she was one of them Jedis that like was taken away from their families really young. And so she grew up and like, aren't we supposed to be peacekeepers? But Anakin, obviously wasn't taken young. He was taken when he was like 10 or something. And like, they didn't even want to train him at that point, but then he figured it out. And so the life he knows is being a soldier, but like an actual Jedi is not a soldier. So, overall,
cool stuff, slick stuff, neat stuff.
So anyways, though, they have a whole thing. So they go back to her first battle, and then they go to the Siege of Mandalore, and then Ahsoka and Anakin fight, but it's like Anakin turns into Darth Vader. Darth Vader, if he never got his ass whoop on Mustafar. I remember the name. What can we do? What can we do to celebrate? There we go. So it's like, you lack conviction. I'm like, oh my God. Hayden Christensen came back prepared. Like he came prepared. Amazing performance. And it was like, it's a good way to put him into the show too, because and this is the first time even Ahsoka live action is still fairly recent. Like, and then now you realize you get to see Anakin and Ahsoka live action on the screen together. So that's always super cool. And you guys here are both old and young. So, anyways, and I gotta say, young Ahsoka, she looks a lot older. She looks like she's 20. Am I wrong? She looks like she's like 20 in the cartoon, but then like when they had the live action kid play Ahsoka, it looked like an actual kid. So that's always weird. But like I guess that's it's called Jedi therapy. So after Jedi therapy, Ahsoka is able to use the Force to jump into a purgle, which are these whales that can jump to light speed or whatever. And because they know Ezra went the path of the purgle, so then like they're like, okay, this will lead us to where we need to go, and that'll help us find Sabine and everything else from there. So so they get into the mouth of a whale, and then they get going, and then part 6 is where we get to it. We have these Dathomir witches, the Night Sisters are what they're called, and then Thrawn comes back, and you get introduced on, and I gotta say, like, even someone who doesn't know, who didn't really pay attention to Rebels, like, they got it right. They got Thrawn right. Like, and I was worried, like, the CGI, like, the blue skin was going to look a little too weird, but overall, it wasn't that bad to look at. I think it's nice because it's, like, humanoid alien, but, it needs to look human, but it has blue skin. They did a great job, I think they did better than that on She-Hulk, but I think maybe with, is it Lars Mikkelsen or whatever? Maybe they used the blue band they use for, like, Gamora and Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that. So it's interesting, but yeah, so they have like cargo or something like that we all thought was like dead people's bodies that they're going to reanimate or something like that. I don't know. They never really explained what the cargo was, but it was going to take them 3 rotations, which I feel like means 3 days in space talk. And so like they have time to kill. And so then Balin goes on his own mission, and he wants to kill Ahsoka and Sabine, but all of that. And then he has his own mission. Something's calling to him on Peridia and stuff like that. And then, obviously through the art of making things convenient, Sabine finds Ezra, and they did a good job. And Ezra wasn't too annoying. He was kind of annoying in Rebels, but like he's not that. But Ezra kind of, I don't know, defeats the purpose a lot of Luke Skywalker, But I guess, Ahsoka also is not very good. I guess a lot of people are in the mindset that when Order 66 happened, only 2 Jedi survived. Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I think, a purge like that, I don't know, with like a bunch of skilled fighters, like, I don't know. To me, it's like, it does make more sense that, like, how many Jedis they had at that academy and shit like that. Like, not all those Jedis could have died. Like, a lot of them had to have survived, And then you lose the Grand Inquisitors, are technically, possibly former Jedi and shit like that. So, stuff like that. Anyways, though, so yeah, I guess they get into little shenanigans with these, like, people who live in shells. Did I write the name of did I write the name of the creatures he lives with? Noti. The Noti. They look like they're like it was like Frog and Toad. Like, it looks like they're just straight out of those stories. Also maybe a little Wes Anderson, It was really cool. I always think like Disney Plus Star Wars, even I'll even say the sequel trilogy, they've really done well at like the visuals of it, like, because obviously the late 70s, early 80s when the first movies came out, and they were, restricted by the technology of the time. Then the prequel trilogy, too much CGI, way too much, and it feels it makes it feel very disconnected, because it feels like things are more, like, tech is more advanced in the past than it is in the future, which is not how the world works. And so, Disney's been doing a good, like, even split, in between, like, yeah, we're going to use CGI, and we're going to use technology that makes our lives easier, but also at the same time, we're going to make it look like it can fit well with the old movies, or I guess both for the most part. So, always the interesting stuff there. They're getting ready, and I guess beef continues to happen. I guess there's a reunite. Everyone's reunited. Ezra, Ahsoka, and Sabine are all reunited. Cool stuff, neat, or which one,
Cool stuff, slick stuff, neat stuff.
And now they have a plan. They end at like episode 7, with like, let's get off this planet, and you're like, huh? Are they gonna take their ship? It does seem weird, like with Ahsoka taking that, like they couldn't have like tracked her, like how she moved or whatever, I don't know. Something like that. I feel like there's easy ways to get off. And so, final episode happened. Morgan Elsbeth gets like an upgrade in her powers and gets the Mother Talzin's blade, which is important if you watch the Clone Wars, and if not, you do not give a shit. And so they have a plan. They're going to try and at least board the ship, and that way when they get yeeted off the planet, and they're going to be able to make it back home or whatever, or take down Thrawn, or do what they need to do, for the most part. And and they made a really good distraction. It gets to the point where Ezra is on the ship, but Sabine stayed back with Ahsoka to help her fight. And then they're like so fucking close to the ship, like, getting close to it. And then Thrawn's like, stop. I'm doing something. And he's like, I need to talk to him. It's like, Thrawn, you're like, shouldn't we just like yeet out of here so they don't catch us? And you're like, no, I need to talk to him first. And then he just brags like, well, you guys lose. And then they yeet it out of there. I'm like, style. So the show ends. Ahsoka and Sabine are stranded on Peridia, but they also have the David Tennant robot. So who's the real loser here? But yeah, at least they have lightsabers, so that's cool. Like Ezra didn't have a lightsaber when he was there, so shit like that. So yeah, that's it. That's Ahsoka. That's summing up Ahsoka. I do want to say, for the most part, I think Star Wars has too many mediums, okay? So, like, I don't know, when Disney bought Star Wars and they decided to kind of reset the canon for the most part, where they're like, okay, the only things that are canon right now, the original 6 movies and the Clone Wars animated series. And it's like, okay, the Clone Wars, like, it was underrated at the time. I think people like it a lot more now, for the most part. So like that, it's like, oh, you just had to watch the Clone Wars, and like you didn't have to watch all the Clone Wars. You could like Google arcs in the Clone Wars and just watch those episodes. And none of those episodes are in order either. So it's just kind of like stories in between episodes 2 and 3. And that's what it is for the most part. But since then they've, Disney has added on a lot to the Star Wars lore. So they made books, too many goddamn fucking books, comic books, they've added more TV shows, animated and live action, and they've also added video games, which also count towards the canon as well, for the most part, from what I believe Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, maybe not Star Killer, Force Unleashed, maybe, I'm not entirely sure with that. I don't even know how many of the games are technically canon, but there's just like so many mediums now. It's like there's a trilogy novel about Thrawn. It's like I need to read, and to understand. I'm like, I need to read. I've already talked about this, but like I need to read 3 books to understand what the fuck is going on. Like come on, I need to read all these comics, and for the most part, a lot of these comics and these books are better stories to put on the big screen, or even for TV. Even animated. I'd rather have it animated, live action, or a movie. Like that's all I really want Star Wars to be, because it's just like there's like a comic story where it's like how Kylo Ren joined the Knights of Ren. It was like he killed one of them or something like that, or he defeated one of them in battle, and he got the rank, and eventually after he had to leave Luke, he went to the Knights of Ren. So I'm like, that would have been cool in the goddamn fucking sequel movies. But no, you had to leave that for all the good storylines are in comics and fucking reading books. And for those of us who actually like watching film and TV, now we're stuck with like stories where we need to read like 5 books to like understand what's going on. So that's where I think just Star Wars in general is struggling with that. But Ahsoka was really a culprit in that. A lot of, like I said, there's a lot of shows that you don't really need to know anything going in, like Andor. I mean, So remember how like they needed the plans of the Death Star, and so they got the plans of the Death Star, and stuff like that. Like he was involved with that, and then you're like a prequel to that, where it's like him, yada yada. Yada. You didn't have to know anything about Star Wars, so yeah, I think that's one thing.
This is America, you dumb son of a bitch. Okay.
Also, they should have just named this show Star Wars Hotties, because all the hot ladies in Star Wars, almost all the hot ladies in Star Wars were in this. Or it was like, so you're telling me, all right, so we're Ivana Sakno, she's Ukrainian. She's the newcomer. She seems new. And I gotta say, you watch her on screen, you're like, I don't know, something's stirring up inside me, you're just one of those people. Then you had Sabine Wren, hottie, I can't remember the actress's name. Mary Elizabeth Winstead playing Hera. I'm watching Star Wars for the plot. And then you learn that she had intercourse with an actual human and made a baby. And so that just doesn't that just make you feel better, Knowing you can, knowing that. Obviously, Rosario Dawson, stunning, she's been stunning forever. And she's also in, like, everything. She was in, like, the second Men in Black movie, I think. How old those movies are, insane. Balin Skull's plot went nowhere. You wouldn't even know about the Mortis gods. Like, you have to, like, learn, like, what the hell? Like, he's, like, looking at a statue, and you're like, okay. And, like, you have to watch, like, a couple episodes of, like, Clone Wars to understand what he's looking for, Poor execution there. And Ray Stevenson also is not with us anymore, even though he, like, just fucking nailed the role. Like, so that's going to be unfortunate. I think they should recast the character, to be honest with you. But because I'd like to see that storyline go somewhere, to be honest with you. Hayden Christensen comes back, fucking nails it. Like, he just fucking nailed the role. Everyone talked about how they didn't like Hayden Christensen, and now coming back to it, I feel like he has more direction. I think he's following Sam Witwer's performance on, I think he did the voice of Anakin on the Clone Wars, and so he kind of followed his direction. It was just a more organized direction for Anakin, and like even Sith Anakin, good shit. Overall, I think Rotten Tomatoes 87% critic score, which I don't know who the critics are. Who are these critics? Are they actual Star Wars fans, or because they always seem to be different. And then audience score 72, so they're not too far apart. Like I did say, they lost the most of the point because you had to have so much background knowledge even going into this show to even kind of understand kind of the plot threads going on to it. But like once you get to episode like 3, you're like, come on, and then you get to episode 4 and you're like, oh yes, daddy, it's so deep, daddy. I need to add the Elizabeth Amelia Clark one. So obviously I feel like they're gonna have to make a season 2, because I think another thing I don't like about the show is it felt like half a story. Like, it didn't feel like a full story went by. And so, like, yeah, but I'm assuming they're making a season 2, and Dave Filoni's also setting up a Star Wars movie, which we're all hoping, and Dave Filoni better do this. This movie needs to be called Heir to the Empire. Just like the old Legends book, Heir to the Empire. It'd be the coolest shit. That'd be the coolest name. Star Wars Heir to the Empire, the movie. Bad ass.
Thank you for watching this clip. Watch it again or watch something